Good evening, Facebook family and YouTube family. Welcome to another Sunday dynamic evening with Brian and Janice. We're just so thankful to have you all join us on this evening, and we're glad to be with you. We have a very hot topic to talk to you about today, and we hope this will enlighten a lot of you because we have some questions that we need to ask you. One of the most important things to most people in their lives today is religion or Christianity. You know, is there a difference? If there is, what is the difference? Well, today Brian and I are going to break it down for you and talk about, is the black community or the black family or black people detaching from religion and forming other branches of a spiritual base or spiritual foundation that works for them? We're going to talk to you about that this evening. I want to let Brian propose the first question, answer the first question for us, and that is Christianity and religion one and the same or totally different? And if so, what is the difference?
Well, good evening, Facebook family. Good evening, YouTube family. We are glad that you are joining us today. As promised on last week, we said we were going to be talking about some of the topics that Janice has proposed concerning religion and religious instructions as it relates to what black people believe internally as well as externally. So let's deal with Janet's first question. I think it's a powerful question. It is a very necessary question that needs to be answered within the black community. Is religion and Christianity one and the same? Are they synonymous with each other? And I'm going to say emphatically, no. Christianity and religion are not the same. So what are the differences? Or what is the difference between Christianity and religion? Christianity, and I want everybody to understand this. Christianity is a set of principles or doctrines that were formulated as it relates to instructions for people to live by. Okay? So when we talk about the actual word Christianity, we know that it has the word Christ in it.
Yes.
Okay, Christ simply being synonymous with Messiah, being synonymous with also teacher. Okay? You can look at it in two different contexts as it relates to the word Christ, being a Messiah, being a teacher, being that angelic voice that leads, a messenger. Okay, so there were many messiahs to come along. But so when you put that word with the suffix of anity, what you're actually saying is Messiah teachings to follow. Okay, so when we talk about Christianity, we're talking about teachings that we follow, principles that we follow, doctrines, and I'll get a little bit more into the discussion about doctrines, but doctrines are those formulations that man put in context
Yes.
to certain principles that were outlined in the teachings of Christ. Okay. So that we actually, that those of us that identify as Christians, follow based on Christianity. Okay. Mm-hmm. All right. So does that make sense about Christianity? Now let's talk about religion. Religion is the man-made doctrines based off of our interpretation and understanding of the principles that are highlighted through biblical texts, be it by the prophets, be it by the apostles, disciples, be it by Christ. Okay. So it is the creational doctrines and dogmas as well, okay, that make up a foundational base on what we believe in, based on the principles that are highlighted in biblical texts that are presented to us by prophets, by the apostles, by Christ, by the writings out of the Bible. Does that make sense?
So Brian, basically, I'm not hearing much of a difference here.
Okay, it's a big difference.
I'm not hearing it.
It's a big difference because Christ doesn't teach what man teach. So that's the underlying difference. Big difference. Religion are man, they're man-made. They're man-made tools. They are the handmaiden. Okay. They are man-made doctrines that are formulated based off of biblical texts. That is a big difference between that and Christianity, because Christianity, when we define Christianity, like I said, it is the Messiah's teaching. All right, that's why you have the word Christ before Christianity, that precedes the anity. Okay, those that follow the Messiah's teaching. If you follow the Messiah's teaching, you're always going to be in conflict with religion, because Christ vehemently talked against those things that were of a religious order that were created by man. So let me give you an example. One particular teaching he talks about is the Sabbath day. So he confronts the Pharisees and the scribes in biblical texts, and Christ said, would not one of you, if your oxen fell in the ditch on a Sabbath day, go and rescue that oxen? Their teaching was to do no work on the Sabbath day. Christ highlights to them that acts of kindness does not in any way break the letter of the law as it relates to keeping the Sabbath sacred and holy. So he says, would you not do kind acts, to simplify it and to put it in layman's term? Would you not do good deeds on the Sabbath day? Okay. So that's just one. So he comes in opposition to the doctrines that have been created based off of the biblical writings or the biblical text of what we know in Leviticus, okay, and also in Deuteronomy, which highlights the different laws, civil, social, okay, laws, that the Jews actually refer to in the Torah as the way of life, laws that teach you how to live, okay? And we know that, I don't want to go into deep detail on that, but it's broken down into two different segments in the Jewish writings, okay? But that's basically what Christ comes against. He opposes that. Now, okay, so question.
So do you feel religion was put in place to govern in a lot of ways, to keep African Americans in line back?
Okay. Absolutely. Religion has always been used as a tool of oppression. And it is no different today. It was used as a tool of oppression in what we would consider to be in the times of Christ. Mm-hmm. Okay, religion was used as a form of oppression before Christ. Okay. So religion is not a new thing when it comes to black people and people that have identified themselves with those that are in Scripture. Okay, which meaning that we possess similar characteristics and not only similar characteristics. When I say characteristics, I'm talking about things that we experience in life that may be identical to those biblical characters that also experience the same thing, i.e., enslavement.
Okay.
Okay, that is a characteristic trait of those in the Bible, some people in the Bible that were enslaved. Commonly, it will refer, when we see that, our mind automatically go to the children of Israel and the enslavement of the children of Israel in Egypt. That's what our mind goes to. Okay, from a standpoint of when you talk about slave, everybody refers to the children of Israel. Well, that characteristic, enslavement, is identical to the characteristics of African Americans and their experience with slavery. Okay? So, like I said, that's a biblical text that people like to pull out to use to identify themselves based on that particular characteristic. Okay? So, when we deal with religion, we have to understand, has always been used to benefit those that were in high places, to keep people in control and subservient. Okay? Now, the word Christendom, C-H-R-I-S-T, Christendom is the tool that is used as a governmental hierarchy that is put in place to control those that are in religion. Okay? So Christendom is different from Christianity and different from religion. Christendom is the government of religion that we and those that refer to themselves as Christians. Christendom is the government that controls the whole concept related to man now, and man's religion controls the whole concept of what we know as Christianity. Okay? So that's why in Christendom, you have a governmental system in place. You have a pastor who could be very well equivalent to in what we would know as a president or a CEO of a company. Okay? You have a deacon board, which would be equivalent to a senate.
Okay, yes.
Okay? You have a trustee board, which would be equivalent to a Congress. Do you understand?
Yes.
Okay, so there's a hierarchical structure in place to make sure that the business of religion as it relates to Christianity is handled properly amongst the people. Okay, does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, so we haven't gotten into the real, question. That's just answering your question about the differences in those three words: Christianity, Christendom, and then religion. All three are different, and all three have different usages as it relates to people in general. Now, as it relates to black people, we know that black people have a tendency to gravitate towards truth, untruth, pseudo-truth. Okay, why? Because we are constantly searching for answers as it relates to God. And black people, anatomically and mentally, psychologically, are more emotional.
You're right, yes.
In context as it relates to some of the other ethnicities on this planet. Okay? We do not see Europeans as emotional when it comes to religion like we do black people. Okay? Now, we talk about that as we get further into the discussion, and I'll talk about why you see that. Okay.
Why do you think that it's such a division now? So people are just scattered. They're leaving the church. They're seeking, especially the younger generation. You know, when you talking about the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, there was a big boom with the mega churches and pastors popping up everywhere, and it's I think a lot of that has confused people. And I think some of it was put in place, like you say, as a business, but it was generating revenue to keep those that were at the top higher in power and to get them richer. I don't think everybody that went branched off and divided came into churches. We got churches almost on every corner now. I don't think a lot of it is basically for the teaching of the gospel, Christianity, true Christianity. I see it more as a religious aspect. It's what I see.
I would agree. If churches taught the true aspect of Jesus Christ, most churches would be empty. Now, let me say this. There are different aspects of what a church will focus on when it comes to the teaching of the Messiah. Very rarely will you see them focus on the Messiah being, like I said, a big denouncer of religion. Very rarely will you hear pastors speak on the revolutionary Jesus that stood up for the poor in his day and the poor of society. That is an identity trait with Jesus as it relates to many of us, okay, that stand up against the oppression of religion that's used to continue to manipulate and to persuade the local people to follow with a mindset that is engineered to their benefit.
Yes.
You understand that? So when we talk about that, I think we have to be very conscious and aware that most pastors are going to gravitate toward the stories that present a loving Messiah over a Messiah that is oppositional any day. Okay?
We don't hear that, Brian. A lot of people don't feel that, Jesus, the Messiah, actually, would get angry and would really chastise people in ways that the true word of God speaks of.
Whenever you have a Messiah that calls, the religious order and structure of that day, Pharisees, scribes, Sadducees,
yes.
Okay, when he calls them devils, and he goes to the point to say where you are fake Jews, you're not even the real house of Israel. When he makes statements that I came unto the house of Israel, okay, when he stops in Samaria, when he goes to places like Galilee, these were places that were occupied by people of African descent at that time. So when you look at Samaria, the woman that was from Samaria,
yes.
Okay, when you look at the 10 lepers, you have the 10 lepers. One was a Samaritan. Why is it necessary to identify them? Because Samaria, ancient Samaria, was the west bank of what we know now as the Gaza Strip. Okay, it is in northern Israel. Okay, that is where Samaria was located. occupied at that time by what we know or call today as the Palestinians. The Palestinians were descendants of the Hamitic line. They were black people. Okay? We also understand that Israel, when you go walking up into the northern Africa or Egypt, there was a land bridge that connected the West Bank, now what we're calling the West Bank, the Gaza Strip, where you could walk directly out of Africa into the Gaza Strip, into Jerusalem, what they know as Jerusalem today, or what we're calling now the predominant area of Israel. It's important for us to know history when it comes to dealing with biblical text. What we have in a lot of, churches today, we do not make the scripture plain. It is not relative to the situations that we face on a daily basis, specifically black men. So when you're talking about generation of the generation now, this generation, even when you're talking about my generation, okay, a lot of black men are not in church. Why aren't they in church? Because they cannot identify with the gospel that's being preached that doesn't deal with what they go through daily in this country and in their life as it relates to the hardships, the pains, the struggles.
Yes.
Okay? You even see now black women are not as quick to gravitate toward religion, even though women are more emotional.
Yes, we
okay?
are. Yes.
And they will gravitate towards it based on whatever they're dealing with emotionally to try to rectify pain, hurt, things of that nature. But when it comes to just proper instructions as it relates to being a lady, as it relates to understanding who God is, and does God deal with me as an individual, as a female? How does God communicate with me individually as a female? What other than the prayer tool do I have in my arsenal as a person that is that calls themselves a Christian? So there are so many questions that now even women are looking at and saying, hey, what is this really about? Okay? I got my man with me, but my man doesn't support me. He won't go to the church. I'm going to the church every Sunday. I'm giving my money. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. I'm the predominant worker in the church, especially in the black church, even though we see young men that are influenced by Christianity, okay, trickle in. But if it's not what they are looking for, they trickle out. Yes. And they look for something else. Okay. So I think those issues are very, very prevalent today in our churches. And all of the questions that you raise, we cannot be afraid to deal with them. Okay. It cannot be church as usual if we are going to really come together as a people and help our community. We have to deal with those hard questions.
Yes, yes.
We have to stop beating around the bush and stop tricking people as it relates to what the Bible says and don't say. We've got to stop using fallible doctrines to impose and usurp authority over people and mentally castrate people concerning their own free will to think critically.
Yes, yes.
And to actually input their critical thinking skills and ideals into practice in what we call the church. We need to, as pastors, as ministers, as bishops, as apostles, We got to get away from the 1, 2, or 3, or 4 doctrinal tenets that we use to keep people in darkness, and start opening up the Bible in such a way to where it really helps people. And not only that, it speaks to black men. When you talk about Jesus as a revolutionary, as somebody that was in the struggle and that opposed not only church governmental authority that was corrupt, but opposed what I would call state and local and federal government authority.
Yes.
Okay? That is why the Jews manipulated the Romans into crucifying him.
That's it. Yes.
You got the spiritual government that manipulates the empirical government at that time, okay, which would have been just like the federal government of the United States, okay, tricked them into crucifying Christ, okay? Now, here's the catch. That government, after the hierarchy, the spiritual government, goes in and manipulates them, guess what they do? It trickles back down to the people to do an uprising. Okay.
Exactly.
Against the very one that was fighting on their behalf. So we see that in our community. It is prevalent in our community. We saw it with we could start with Marcus Garvey.
Yes.
Okay. Marcus Garvey had moles within the UNIA. Okay. The federal government saw that they could not really touch him, so they fabricate a story as relates to illegal printing, okay, and advertising campaigns and tax evasion. Okay, this is what Hoover does to Garvey, and he follows that same trend as it relates to all other, what he called messiahs that would come and agitate the people, black people, to fight for liberation and to oppose a tyrannical government that was in place at that time. So we can go from Garvey, you can go
Malcolm.
to Fred Hampton,
Yeah.
Malcolm, those are the modern day messiahs. Okay?
Martin.
And yes, Martin. So in each one, when you study the history
of them.
as it relates to the revolution that they led at that time, each one of them had moles within the camp. So go back to the example of Christ had Judas Iscariot in the camp. So it's always been that way, is what I'm saying.
Okay.
We have to, like I said, we have some real issues that most pastors aren't willing to deal with because it affects, their pocketbook. And, I've said this before. I understand. I get it. If that is the only livelihood they have for their families, there's certain areas they're not going to tread upon. Okay? And that's fine if they don't.
Especially when you got a family that's been in that church for 100 years, and you got a deacon board that's sitting there governing them.
Absolutely.
And,
well, and that would be the authority of the church. The pastor would simply simply called upon to deliver a message to pacify the people. Okay, and a lot of times in pacification, it is mental manipulation.
Wow.
Okay, it is to keep the people subservient. It is not to liberate the people. So there is no religion that was created in hopes of liberating the people. Religion was never formed to liberate people, So the very word religion itself comes from the Latin word religare, which actually means to bind and to tie up. So religion was never designed. That's why doctrines, like I said, dogmas, tenets, were created by man based off of the biblical text. It is their understanding, their opinion that is written to govern the people. So I can go back in church history when I was in college in theology. So we had what we call world religion. Okay, that was one of the classes. We had to learn the concept and the setup, how religion was organized all over the world. Okay? And each structure of religion, whether it is Christianity, whether it is Islam, whether it is Buddhism, whether it's Confucianism, it doesn't matter. Each religion structure is pretty much the same. And it is always used to keep people subservient, okay, to the opinion of those that sets the doctrine.
Yes.
Okay. So
that's hard. That's hard, Brian, for people to grasp and to face, because, a lot of us been in church all our lives.
Yeah.
And, and it was like, if you didn't go to church, people look at you like you're a demon, something wrong with you, you're going to go to hell. So we just need to know, people want to know the truth. And I think this generation that's coming along now, that is what they're searching for. Because they've looked at our lives. They've looked and seen their parents and their grandparents struggle. They've seen them go through divorces, job losses, and you name it, all types of hardships. And they said, listen, grandma was in church every Sunday, every Wednesday, every time the doors open. Mm-hmm. And they're telling me that I'm going to be delivered, I'm going to be blessed, I'm going to be healed if I keep going to church, if I stay in church. And I'm looking at the life that my grandmother and my mother and the sufferings that they had to go through. Mm-hmm. People want to know the truth. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that's a hard thing for a lot of people to digest. The older generation, that the young people are just, hey, I'm not buying that. Mm-hmm. I identify with something different. I identify with something else. I know of another way that is going to keep me grounded and keep me at peace. Mm-hmm. We are in the Bible Belt. Yes.
Okay. So what makes up the Bible Belt? Simple, very, very simple way to define the Bible Belt. The states that succeeded from the Union makes up the Bible Belt. Okay? So all of your southern states make up the Bible Belt. That's what the Bible Belt is. Okay? Why were the states that made up, succeeded from the Union, why were they the states that were called the states of the Bible Belt? Well, for one specific reason. Okay? Because it was those states that used missionaries from the Anglican Church, from the Lutheran Church, which origin is out of Germany. The Anglican Church is a Reformed church out of the Church of England. Okay. Then you have the Reformist Church. The Reformist Church is a knockoff of the Protestant movement of Martin Luther. The Protestant movement is a knockoff from the Catholic churches because Martin Luther disagreed with some of the doctrines, i.e. you get the word protest. So he protested against some of the doctrinal teachings of the Catholic Church, and those that followed Martin Luther were called Protestants. And that's where you get the word Protestant from. Okay. So when we talk about church history, we need to understand that every church that we see in America, just like I was just giving you, are forms of religion. Okay? They were created, designated, designed with a specific purpose in mind. Okay? And that was that their doctrine would be superimposed on those that were their followers. Now, that's keeping it in simplistic form. Very, very simple form, very layman forms. Also, when we think about the Bible Belt, the Bible was used in those states also to keep slaves. Very, very submissive to their slave masters. No doubt about it. Okay? I have this little book written by Charles Cocock Jones. Okay? He is a missionary that went into Georgia in the early 1800s, and he put together an instructional manual on how to missionize Negroes in order to keep them subservient to their masters.
Wow.
He put together a whole curriculum that came out in 1832 called The Religious Instructions of the Negroes. Let me read to you what Charles Cocock Jones says. This is, he talks to the Agricultural Society of South Carolina in 1829, and this is what he says. There's needs no stronger illustration of the doctrine of human depravity than the state of morals on plantations in general. Besides the mischievous tendency of bad example in parents and elders, the little Negroes is often taught by his natural instructors that he may commit any vice he can conceal from his superiors. And thus falsehood and deception are amongst the earliest they him died. Okay? Their advancing years is but a progression to the higher grades of iniquity. The violation of the seventh commandment is viewed in a more venial light than in fashionable European circles. The depredation of rice have been estimated to amount to 25% on the gross average of crops. And this calculation was made after 50 years' experience by one whose liberal provision for their wants left no excuse for their ingratitude. This is what he says. The practice of some churches is to divide the service on the Sabbath between whites and blacks. This is an excellent and benevolent arrangement, and it were to be wished that it was more extensively entered into. The servants form as truly a part of the minister's congregation as the masters themselves, nor can we see how he can officially, not to say conscientiously, omit their regular instructions. Okay? So Cocock Jones says there's a need to be indoctrinating these Negroes so that they understand the difference between the master and the servant, their duties as it relates to being a laborer, as opposed to the master, who is the CEO, the owner, who is the producer of the profits, even though they're doing the work. Okay, so we have some real issues to tackle in the black community when it comes to how we govern in the church. Let me tell you this, and I say this with a very, very, from a standpoint of I want to be careful with my words.
Yes.
Okay, but I also want to highlight that most churches now have become a form of entertainment. It's about who can hoop the best in the black circles, especially in the Bible Belt, or who can outdance each other, or who can appear to be more spiritual in some religious circles by dress, by non-dress, by doctrinal tenets that were opinions of man instituted to keep the flock subservient and thinking a certain way. Okay. So in the black church, what he said about it's good to keep whites and blacks divided, the church is still the most segregated place in America on Sunday. Mm-hmm. This was in 1832.
Wow.
Keep the blacks and the whites. Blacks and whites are divided when it comes to doctrinal issues as well. Okay, so white Pentecostals think a little bit different from black Pentecostals. Okay, black bishops organize and structure slightly different from white bishops that organize and structure a district or an area of churches. Okay, so we have to, there again, we have to understand as black people, why don't we see black people change in church? Because we are so conditioned now. That's why friends can talk about friends. So-called friends can talk about so-called friends.
Wow.
They can come visit you with you at church and then leave right out the church and talk about you to somebody else. See, jealousy, enviousness in our churches are at an all-time high. Separation and division in our churches are at an all-time high. Okay? We are more concerned about anniversaries, parties that we can have in the church setting and in the church structure, but it not be called secular. Okay, so when I say that, Brian, what do you mean? Church gatherings are no more than parties. They just don't refer to being secular. Okay? Church anniversaries, pastors' anniversaries, celebration of and honoring men and women that are distinguished in the church, they are no more than formal parties that's looked at as wholesome, as opposed to you being out in a nightclub with the short dress on and the brother that's got the six-pack showing, you understand, and his shirt open. You understand what I'm saying? Different content, okay, but the same as it relates to what the intentions are. You go to a secular party, you know what the intentions are. The intentions are to get what you want and do what you want.
Yes.
Okay? You go to a church function that is labeled some of those things that I just highlighted, okay, to whether it's the you're just not going to that extreme. Okay? But in the background, there's still some ulterior motives there.
Yes, it is, Brian.
You understand?
Yes, it is.
So
and that saying, I've heard this said by many people, especially older people. You've not been hurt until you've been hurt by church folk.
Well, and most people in the Bible Belt will classify themselves as a person that is religious or a person that attends church. Now, the younger generation that come up, you don't have as many of them that classify themselves as a churchgoer or as religious. You don't have them classifying themselves as Christians. Okay. They are on a whole nother level when it comes to the non-respect for organized, structured religion than we are. We were taught in our generation to respect religion, to respect the pastor, to respect the deacons. You understand?
Do not speak against the church.
That's exactly right. You know, I had one of my close friends to tell me at one time, and you have to, when you look at the black church, there would be, and how people kept things silent in the black church. You would have young lady to pop up pregnant, 16 or 17. Going to the church, sitting in church every Sunday worshiping. And when the baby would get here, the baby would look just like Deacon so-and-so, or just like Pastor so-and-so. Nothing would be said. If anything got a little bit rowdy, then that young lady would be taken out of that church.
Yes, she would.
Okay.
I've seen
that family would be dismissed from that church.
They would.
Okay.
Yes, they would.
So, and this was a common thing within the church realm and within the church structure. Okay. So you have a lot of people that do not gravitate to churches anymore because of young people, because of what they have heard, oftentimes because what they have seen. They see the same person that's on a Sunday morning jumping and shouting in the clubs on Friday night jumping and shouting. So what's the difference? That's in their mind what they're asking. Okay, so they don't look at grace is sufficient. They don't look at everybody's a sinner. No, they look at the fact that you lying. You are a hypocrite. And why should I be a part of something where you can't even be true to yourself? That's what the young people are looking at. Okay? And they're saying to themselves, at least I'm being true to myself.
Yes, that's exactly.
I am what I am. Right. I do what I do. And I don't need you to judge me. That's what they're saying.
Yes.
So we have to take into account, do they have a valid point? Absolutely they do. If you are out there doing the same thing they do, you lying, you conniving behind people back, you jealous, you envious, you have nothing good to say except for when you're in that person's presence and you lie to them, and then you go right behind their back and talk about them. So all of those things we have to really start asking ourselves. That's why I say black people, for some reason, we gravitate to religion, we play with God, we act like we really want to become better, and we'll be the first to say, I'm a Christian, I'm a religious man or woman. We'll be the first to say that, and we're the biggest devil on the street. Okay? So there's something wrong with, I use this word in the pulpit, there's something wrong with religiosity. Okay? When you've been so religiousized that it hardens you to the point to where you can't see your own failures and your own faults and really desire true change and allow true change to happen.
Yes, to manifest.
Okay,
yes.
There's something
wrong with you.
Drastically wrong. So these are hard questions. These are hard issues to deal with. These are issues, brothers and sisters, what we're talking about, many people don't like to deal with.
No, they don't.
We don't, and it's unfortunate because this is how we rectify some of the problems.
Exactly.
Okay, we have to address them in our communities. Okay, there is a very real issue in our community when you've got black churches, more black churches in the ghetto than you've got healthy grocery stores. There's a real problem
Yes.
When you got more black churches in the ghetto than you have doctor offices. There's a real problem when you have more black churches in our community than we have community centers and elementary schools and junior high or middle schools and high schools. There is a problem when we could put all of our money into an institution and all around us is abject poverty, sickness, disease,
yes.
and uneducated people.
Black people.
Okay? I said our community. So I'm designating our community. We have to deal with the real issue. What is the purpose of the black church now? Okay? Is it just for those that are lower to middle class? You may have a few that's upper middle to come and to say that I've been to church and to continue in that vein of what their mother and father did and what their grandmother and grandfather did. What is that? The church is just a social order of those that are can consider themselves have made it. And we really don't care about those all around us in the community that are dying. So we have the health fairs. We feed during the holiday season. But there's no real plan to deal with those just three things that I said. I believe that black pastoral leadership, black church leadership needs to become more proactive in really addressing the problems from a permanent basis, not a temporal basis. How do we fix this permanently? How do we establish something that's long after we gone, that will still be functioning, and we're not depending only on social grants and on government handouts? How do we tackle this as a people ourselves, and we become our own source of funding, whether there's grant monies or not, whether there's a social group or not, whether there was a nonprofit or not that will come set up? How do we, as black leadership in ministry, tackle these hard issues in our community and organize our people to set up something permanently? That is what the black pastor will not. You have some black pastors doing it. I don't want to paint a broad brush on all pastors.
Right.
Because I've got some friends that are some great pastors, and they're doing it. Okay? They're unfortunately not in the South. Okay? But I've been so blessed to be a part of ministries up north that are doing these things. I'm talking about got one friend, they bought up his whole neighborhood around the church and put people in housing. Took homelessness off the street. So, see, we have to, for me, it's a personal thing because I've been a part, I've helped organize, set up churches that really want to make a difference. You understand what I'm saying? So when we deal with, matters that affect us from a standpoint of who we are as a whole person, not just a half of a person. Because, see, we only want to talk about God will bless you, God will bless you. We've been saying that for 400 years. Now, I put from American Africans that are in this country for 400 years. Well, God is not partial. It rains on the just as well as the unjust, right?
Right.
So why are some blessed, some are not? Why are some, dealing with things that others are not? Is it that God is only blessing some and not blessing others? See, these are real questions that we have to, and they're very easy to answer. But when we religiousize it, it's very difficult to answer because we make God a bigot and we make God prejudiced. You understand what I'm saying? So, when what most people don't see today is they have made God a bigot, meaning that he can only exist based off of what my doctrine says and what my little box has put him in.
Wow.
Or put her in, whichever your belief is.
Wow.
You understand what I'm saying?
Wow.
And he can't go outside of the frame and the parameters of what I think and what I feel that God should do and be.
You see, Brian, people don't want to hear that.
Well,
because it's the truth, and it steps on a lot of toes. You understand? But it's okay if people get offended with the truth, as long as it's the truth. Because sometimes the truth hurts, you know, and we don't want to hear it. Because some of us, people have been in it so long, they're so engraved and so embedded in that, in the church, and the way, the goings and the operations of it. And they're doing well in their mind. I got the big house, the nice home, the nice car, the clothes and what have you, and a good job. And any moment, all of that can be wiped out.
Yeah, especially at the time that we're in now.
Exactly.
With the
AI
creation of
technology.
AI. Yes. So what we have to realize is, I think number one, like I said, we have to define those three words that we talked about: religion, Christianity, and Christendom. Okay, we have to understand what they mean, and we have to understand their benefits, their pros and their cons concerning our community, and then we have to act accordingly. Okay, listen. I'm the first to admit that what worked for grandmother and great-grandmother may not work in this generation.
What worked for mother and father.
That's right. What worked for mom and dad. What worked for you and I may not work for
this generation. The next generation. That's right.
And so we have to be real about that. And we have to start understanding and accept. Have we done something wrong? Let me give you an example. The civil rights movement, for the most part, consisted of the baby boomer generation.
Yes.
We are the children of the baby boomer generation.
That's exactly right.
The civil rights movement, the backbone of the movement was the black church. Period. Nobody will argue that. Okay? And the black pastor was the instrument that was used to crush segregation. Okay? Period. The black minister was the tool that was used to crush segregation. Period. So it didn't matter what faith, even white ministers that aligned themselves with black pastors used their authority that they had within their faith group to help crush segregation. We are the children of that movement. We, the children, forgot to tell our children.
Bingo.
We are the children of comfortability based off of what our parents did in their struggle for us to have certain rights and to get a decent education.
And we failed to
in the process of that, we did not continue in that vein. Even if the vein had went another way, just teaching the history, telling the history, being proponents of it. We became so comfortable in the integration of what the movement accomplished, okay, that we forgot that we were still in America being oppressed by a system that was not designed for you to be educated, not designed for you to have the same social benefits, not designed for you to have the same access to health care, not designed for you to actually really express your religious freedoms, not designed for you to protest in good spirit. You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
Without having any type of confrontation. We forgot that in our comfortability, okay, now there used to be a joke. You had teachers, preachers, and nurses were the three professions that most black men and women went into coming out of the civil rights movement. Okay. And still to this day, that proponent exists in our generation. You see, in our generation, there are more black nurses, more black teachers, and more black preachers in our generation of the baby boomers. See, those are facts. Data supports that. You can go look it up. You understand what I'm saying? So we, as our generation, we forgot to take it to the next level. Now our babies are coming behind us without any knowledge, trying to organize and figure this out themselves. And because we don't fully understand, they're saying we don't want to align ourselves with how this brother thinks or this sister thinks, because her thinking is still old. See, if we had done our job, their thinking would be a new type of mindset. Okay? It would be something that was not the same as the civil rights movement, but had a good foundation as it relates to how to organize and structure any movement.
Right, and to continue to liberate our people.
That's right, around liberation.
Yes.
That's exactly right. So, we have got to stop making excuses. We really, really do. Yes, we're in the Bible Belt. We could do some great things. Pastors, churches in the Bible Belt, we could do some awesome things. Okay? But we've got to get away from Charles Colquitt Jones, where he says, divide them. Okay? Now, I didn't read the other portion of what I wanted to read as it relates to the religious instruction. There was a 10-step process of how to separate the Negro and to what to teach him out the Bible. Okay? So the doctrine that was taught to keep the Negro confused, to keep the Negro separated, okay? To keep the Negro subservient, to keep the Negro in fear, okay? Fear was one of the dominant teachings as it relates to keeping the Negro subservient. Okay? How to impose that fear based off of the concept of the devil's going to get you, hell. All of these are concept teachings now. Now, I'll have to do a whole nother show to go into that. But in the original text, you never see the word hell. There is nowhere in original scripture that you see that word. You never see the word devil. Devil is a European creation. Now, like I said, it would take means I would have to unpack that. And if we have enough people interested, I don't mind unpacking that. But the word devil is simply the word evil, with a D put in front of it. Okay? Whether it be demonic evil, whether it be desperate evil, it can be. So the formation of words, okay, means a whole lot when it comes to forming doctrine. But you do not see that in the original manuscript. Okay? Even the word that we call Satan or the Satan, you do not see that in the original manuscript. Now, for those of us that are theologians and have studied world history, have studied origin of languages, have studied the Hebrew and the Greek, we know that. So when pastors stand up on Sunday morning and they say devil, we need to define what devil is. What are you referring to? Okay? Because you can be a devil. It's simply somebody that does evil. Okay? That's why you hear women running around here now calling their, look at that little devil. How bad he is. Okay. You know, when I was growing up, I used to hear my elders all the time. Boy, you act just like the devil. You the devil. You understand what I'm saying? So it just goes to show you how shallow the word is. Okay? So it needs to be defined so people stop living in fear. Okay? Like I said, that's a subject for another day. But I'm just showing that to you to show you how oppressive. And all of this is in the instructions for the Negroes. Put him in fear. Make him feel like he is the devil. If you read Ibram Kendi's book, Stamped from the Beginning,
yes,
he talks about in his book how the white missionary made the black man Satan and the devil, to the point to where when black men looked at each other, they saw evil. Okay? This is, and then put a campaign together. Back then, all they had was books, pamphlets, newspapers. How in the newspaper it printed that the Negro slave, specifically the man, had a tail that was pointed and had horns protruding out of his head. He was the devil. He was equivalent to the devil. That's why he had the barbaric nature. That's why he was sexually implicit and sexually aroused all the time. They made the black man something of disdain. So it's no wonder that black men are absent from the church. So some things come full circle. Okay? Even if they don't know why they don't go. For that to have been instituted in our religious circles. You understand?
yes,
Okay?
okay,
And even if the black man unconsciously and unaware refers to the devil, unconsciously and unaware, he's referring to himself in the sight of the European. So when European people see our black kids on the street, our little young black boys, that's why a police officer can shoot him at 12 years old, shoot him at 7 years old. Unconsciously do things to us because we're not considered to be human. You're some freak of nature. You're some supernatural evil being that was concocted to continue to impose fear in a people. So, we better get ready to end. It's 8:45. But I'll just conclude by saying this. Like I said, we could deal with a lot of those things.
Yes.
But I want to encourage, churches all over and pastors. Like I said, I'm very close to a lot of pastors that are good friends of mine. Okay? And we often talk, and they often call me for a little wisdom, the little that I have. and I appreciate that. I appreciate them wanting to delve a little bit deeper. I would encourage pastors, don't be afraid. Something's got to change about the black church in the Bible Belt. We have got to start really just go back and look at, is our program set up to really impact our community? Because I'm going to tell you something, if nothing else is being proven, what is being proven now is that black people, will continue to be used and abused by this governmental system, and that there is no intentions from either party to address poverty in our communities that we call ghettos. There's no programs that's intended to deal with our children that are being pushed to alternative schools, pushed through public schools as pipelines to prisons, There's no program in place to address directly the issues that plague us. Everything that's in place now, every law being written, will be for us trickle down. And by the time it gets to us, it will be so diluted that we will not experience the benefit of it as other groups are experiencing that it is written for. So we need to wake up and smell the coffee. Black churches need to wake up and smell the coffee. And stop depending on the government to fix our problems. It is not going to happen. It has not happened since this country has been in existence. It will not happen when this country goes out of existence. Because Rome is falling. This empire is going down. And if we don't address our problems collectively as a black clergy on how to deal with the issues in our community and stop waiting on leadership that's been bamboozled, that's been hoodwinked, that's bootleg, and all they care about is me, mine, I. If we do not come together and say, what do we need to do, and then start putting a plan in place to fix some of these issues, I keep saying, it is self-genocide, and we are accepting exactly what we're going to get from our oppressor. We will not be a people in 10 to 20 years if we don't do something radical and serious to address our community issues. Black government is not going to do it. They are too bewitched. A spell is on them. They are too bewitched by the whole structure in the system that's supposed to work for everybody, and they want to work for everybody, but fail to really come to grips with and to acknowledge that nothing has been done constitutionally that would put us in a position to where government really works for black people. The 14th Amendment has been literally dissected to nothing when it comes to black people. Just like affirmative action was dissected to mean nothing when it comes to black people. We are seeing the end if we do not do something. So I'll end there. I know I've probably gone, and like Brother Joe Brown would say, pontificating a whole lot. But I hope that our family, YouTube and Facebook family, got something out of the discussion tonight. But like I said, we could deal with a parameter of things. We need to know about them all. We need to have knowledge of them all. Those things I don't have knowledge of, we need to get those people here that can talk about those things to educate us. And then we need to start reading again. I know that we now have devices. We got the Kindle books. We have cell phones. Do something on the cell phone besides TikTok and Facebook. Posting pictures and all of this, that's great, that's fine, that's dandy. But if you would put as much effort into reading a book on social media as we do TikTok and Twitter and all the other stuff we do, Instagram this, Instagram that, Facebook this, it got to show everybody my new hair, my new clothes, got to show everybody I'm doing the Twyla dance and I'm doing this dance. If we would put our energy into more than I call it showboating, okay, and really get serious as a people about the issues in our community, we could do this. We could save ourselves. When I see the energy, I'm not a Facebooker. No. I despise it. I think it's good for business, for those that do business, but it's too much underhanded, manipulative, social engineering going on from the master level down to those that are Facebook addicts. We need to talk about that. Some people need to be delivered from Facebook. And it is not a spiritual deliverance. They need a drug. Because it's no more than they need a 12-step program. I used to teach the 12-step program. Part of that is a spiritual source. Okay? So we know. But some people are more addicted to Facebook, TikTok. They will not read a book. They can barely function in their own home because they got to post this, got to post that, got to do this, got to make that. It's my brothers and sisters, it's out of control. If you all that's listening to us tonight don't change some things to help, and some of y'all may not want to help our people. Some may not even believe what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And I don't have a problem with that. That's your prerogative. That's your choice. But for those that can see what's happening, align yourselves with a group, align yourselves with somebody. Let's organize. Let's put aside pretentious opinions and let's work together. You understand what I'm saying? That's how simple that is. So, I'm done.
Well, thank you guys, and thanks for joining us. Please share this video and join us on YouTube under Men and Women of Destiny, and also Facebook under Janice. Thank you, and have a wonderful night.
Stay together.